tourniquet's an item everyone should have and know how to use. I'm Andrew with SHTF Honey Badger, and that's what we're going to be talking about here today. Tourniquets are one of the cheapest, easiest, and quickest life-saving devices to have at your disposal when shit hits the fan, and work so well that the military, law enforcement, and fire rescue personnel have been carrying them part of their standard issue equipment for over a decade. In any situation where you encounter catastrophic bleeding to a limb, such as in a car accident, with a gunshot wound, or a chainsaw mishap, for example, a tourniquet is normally the best option to apply. If the tourniquet's applied properly, the injured party can be transported in an appropriate amount of time to a hospital, which is typically going to be in 1 to 2 hours. The chances of permanent damage from the tourniquet use itself is actually very minimal. When picking out a tourniquet to buy, there are several different types out there on the market, and the two most common ones you find are the CAT, or Combat Application Tourniquet, made by North American Rescue, or the SOF tourniquet made by TAC Med Solutions, and they use a similar design. I do have both of these types sitting in front of me on the table here today. This one, for example, is a CAT tourniquet. Their newest generation has a gray timestamp instead of a white, so that's how you can tell it's their newest gen. And this here is an older gen, but it's a soft T tourniquet. This is their standard. They also do have a wide version with a wider strap on it as well. Both tourniquets here consist of that long section that is wrapped around the limb, and then it goes back into a buckle. Once it's pulled through the buckle, you pull it tight, and then depending on the tourniquet style, like with the CAT tourniquets, they're going to be velcroed actually back to themselves. With the soft T tourniquets, at least this particular version, there's a clip right here that you screw down on to secure it if it's needed. Once you do that, you twist on your windlass on both of these designs, and then once you're done, the windlass is locked in this case on the CAT tourniquet, into a channel. On this particular model of the soft T tourniquet here, it's just locked into this triangle, and there is one on both sides of the windlass. So this guy right here. They do have newer versions with the soft T's as well that are more similar to the CATs in that they have the channel up here. I just don't have one of them in front of me. And then the final step, once you have your tourniquet applied, is you're going to write the time on it. So, for example, this CAT actually has a specific spot for it right here. The soft T's, they do have a spot for them as well right here. So you just write the time the tourniquet's applied, and once you have that time written on there, that way medical personnel at the hospital will be able to determine what exact time that tourniquet was applied and know how to do treatment. One thing I do want to emphasize as well with tourniquets is there are a ton of knockoffs out there on the market, specifically on Amazon and eBay, but there are ones with other resellers as well. So when you are picking these out, I would make sure that you're actually picking out tourniquets from authorized resellers and dealers, or in most cases you can even buy these items from the manufacturer themselves, such as the North American Rescue or the specific website for the soft T TAC Med over here. Now we're going to demonstrate how these tourniquets are used. So for example, we're going to be taking this blue tourniquet here, and with this blue tourniquet, it's used to signify it's a training tourniquet. These are only meant for training, even though they are designed to the same specifications as the real models. These blue tourniquets are able to be used in that way. Tourniquets are a one-time use item, so you don't want to be practicing and using your real tourniquet like this right here when you have a blue one. So if you're going to practice with your tourniquets, make sure you pick up a blue tourniquet. These are one of the few items as well where if you do buy the knockoff version, since you're not actually using it for life-saving means, it's probably okay. They're going to give you a same and similar feel to training. This is actually a knockoff versus the CAT. So for training, go with the blue ones. Buy them online, buy them cheap, but do not buy the knockoffs if you're using it for actual gear, as that can kill you because these can fail if they're the knockoff versions. So now that we got that out of the way, the first step you're going to do is I have this one right here, and you're going to deploy it. Now when you stage this on your gear or on your person, you want to think of a spot where you can access it with both hands. So for example, on mine, I carry it right up here in the front of my belt when I'm wearing this belt. If I'm carrying it on an actual duty belt, I carry it just vertical in a similar position so it's easily accessible from both hands. And if I'm carrying it in a vehicle, it's off my person, but you still want it in the vehicle somewhere accessible, such as in a brightly marked med kit. So now that we kind of talked a little bit about where you have it, your first step is deploying it. So with tourniquets, keep in mind if you're using it, it's more than likely on yourself. So keeping that in mind, you're going to typically be deploying it one-handed. If it's an arm injury, you may be using both hands if it's a leg, but in this case, we're going to pretend it's an arm. So we're going to deploy it. And then once you have it out, this is personally how I found best. Just shake it out like that to get it opened. May not get open perfectly, but it is good enough to get it over an extremity. So I'm just going to loop it through and pull it up. And when you're placing this on your arm, you want to make sure that you're at least 3 inches above the wound. So if I get shot in the wrist, I could put it down here. If I get shot in the elbow, I'm definitely going to want it up higher here, closer to the shoulder. But general rule of thumb with tourniquets is it's high or die. So the higher you put it up on the limb, the better. So we're going to put that up here, and then you're going to grab the end of it. So right here, for example, they all have these red pull tabs if it's the cat-style tourniquets, which these are probably the most common. So you grab that, and you can pull it. And in real life, you just pull it hard. Pull it around tight, and it'll Velcro back to itself. And don't worry about this slack. That won't matter when you're applying this. Then you're going to grab your windlass. You're going to twist. And you're going to keep twisting until the bleeding stops. So in this case, I just twisted it twice. It feels tight. My arm's already tingling and getting numb. But you may have to twist it more. If you have a lot of bleeding, you still may see some steepage and bleeding pouring out. So just keep twisting this until there's absolutely no bleeding coming when you're applying the tourniquet. Now that we've done that, then depending on the situation, if possible, but it's not always possible, you take your timestamp, put it over, and on the cat tourniquets, this will lock the windlass in place. And then take a pen or a Sharpie, write the time on there this was applied. That way, when it gets to the hospital, they're going to be able to look at this and say, hey, we know this tourniquet's been on X amount of time, and then they can conduct their treatment from there. Whew. And when you're applying it to the leg, it's going to be a similar process. The only difference is because you do have the ability to thread this through. So like in this case, this is unthreaded. If you're applying it to a leg, so let's say, for example, I'm going to bring my leg up here so the camera can see it. You can wrap it around and then stick it through. And then pull it tight. Once you have it tight, same thing, spin your windlass and wrap this as tight as you need to cut off circulation. Remember, you're going to keep wrapping this until the bleeding is completely gone. Once it's tight, you've wrapped this until the bleeding's gone. Again, just put your timestamp on here and you're good to go. And then once your tourniquet's done, or well, not really when it's done, but when you have it and you're storing it on your gear, remember as well, you do want to pre-stage these. And I do want to touch on that real quick as well with pre-staging. You'll see different ways people do it. I even see people keep these still in the plastic wrapping they come in. Absolutely don't do that. The last thing you want to do if you're bleeding out or somebody else you're involved with is bleeding out, or even you stopped at a car accident, some poor guy got his arm nearly amputated and you're trying to put it on there, is to be dealing with a plastic wrap around your tourniquet. So that's the first thing, is toss that plastic wrap out and then make sure it's prepped right and ready to go. So personally, I only fold this about 3 to 4 inches over. So just enough so I have a really wide loop I'm going to work with. And with the cats, I just fold it up so the buckle's here. And then you want this open. Your windlass in the vertical position. And then fold this just back on itself once. And then kind of break even and fold it back up twice. So this is how you'd want to see this stored. And this way it's easily deployable, so when you grab it from your pouch, grab it out of a med kit, wherever you're storing this, you can grab it with that one-handed motion I was talking about, and then shake it and loop it on a limb. So remember, store these properly, keep the tourniquet with you. It's definitely one of those easiest ways to save a life, whether it's your life or somebody else's, if you're facing a catastrophic injury to a limb. And they're $30. They're cheap. Go out and get one. And remember, stay safe.